Welcome back to another episode of Train for Life Fitness Podcast.
We are so glad to have you here today.
Yeah, we really are. Because imagine putting in like 4 solid months of grueling work in the weight room. You know, you were sweating through dozens of workouts, pushing your limits.
Showing up even when you're just totally exhausted.
Exactly, showing up tired. And at the end of those 4 months, your reward is building the equivalent weight of, well, a single medium-sized bag of grocery store apples in muscle.
Which sounds incredibly slow.
Right. It sounds slow and honestly a little frustrating, doesn't it? But today, we are going to explain why that painfully slow biological math is actually the key to unlocking, the exact body composition and health longevity you are trying to achieve.
Yeah, we are taking on a massive paradigm shift today. Our mission for this deep dive is to systematically dismantle one of the most stubborn, persistent myths in the entire fitness world.
Oh, it's the worst one.
It really is. It's this deeply ingrained fear that if a woman picks up a heavyweight, she's inevitably or accidentally going to become bulky.
It is the ultimate fitness urban legend. And to tear this myth down to the studs, we've brought together a fantastic stack of sources for this deep dive.
We really have some great data today.
Yeah, we're pulling heavily from fitness expert Sofiane's Let's Roar philosophy. We're diving into the data of a massive 2019 meta-analysis on women's resistance training.
Plus the updated position stand from the American College of Sports Medicine.
Right, the ACSM, and we're grounding all these lifelong health implications in medical context from the Mayo Clinic, so we have a lot to cover.
We do. And what stands out across all these sources is that defeating this myth requires us to look, far beyond the gym floor.
Yeah, totally.
We have to look at the actual cellular biology of muscle tissue, unpack the deep psychological grip of the bathroom scale, and examine why avoiding the free weight section might actually cost you the exact physical capabilities you want as you age.
But before we even touch a dumbbell or even step foot near the gym, we need to completely overhaul the vocabulary you use to describe your body.
Oh, the vocabulary is everything.
It is. Reading through Sofiane's notes, it is glaringly obvious that words like bulky and toned are essentially semantic traps.
They really are. They mean entirely different things biologically than they do in everyday conversation.
Right.
The word bulky is particularly misunderstood. Let's look at the mechanical reality of what happens when someone starts a lifting program.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Well, after a few weeks, many women feel physically thicker. Their jeans might feel a bit tighter around the thighs.
And they immediately hit the panic button. Right.
Exactly. They think the weights are making them huge. But physiologically, the muscle hasn't just exploded in size. What is actually happening is that they are developing new, firm muscle tissue underneath their existing unchanged layer of subcutaneous body fat.
Wait, so because they haven't lost the fat yet, the new muscle is essentially just like propping up the fat layer, just pushing it outward.
That is the mechanical reality, yes.
Yeah.
If your nutrition isn't in a caloric deficit, that body fat isn't going anywhere. So you visually perceive that new outward projection as bulk. But the problem isn't the presence of the muscle. The problem is that the full body composition change hasn't fully materialized yet.
It's like the fat layer is acting like a heavy blanket over a newly reinforced frame.
That's a great way to put it, yes.
Which naturally leads us to the ultimate buzzword, which is toned.
Oh, everyone wants to be toned.
Every single fitness marketing campaign promises to help you get toned. But Sofiane makes a critical point here in the sources. Toning is not a verb.
Right. It's not an action you perform on a muscle.
No, it's not. You can't tone a bicep by doing 50 reps with a, 2-pound pink dumbbell.
Because a muscle fiber is actually quite simple in its capabilities. It has very limited options. It can undergo hypertrophy and grow larger, it can atrophy and shrink, or it can stay the exact same size.
That's it.
That's it. So that highly desired toned aesthetic mathematically requires 2 specific biological conditions to exist at the same time.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, first, you must possess enough actual muscle mass to create a physical shape. And second, you must maintain low enough body fat to reveal the shape of that muscle.
Right. The analogy I love to use from the sources is thinking about it like traditional sculpting. You cannot carve a beautiful, defined statue without starting with enough clay.
The clay is essential.
Exactly. In your body, the muscle is the clay. You have to build it up. But To actually see the art you've created, you have to chip away the excess stone, which is the body fat.
And if you just starve yourself and spend hours on the elliptical, you might lose the fat, but you are also burning away the clay.
Right. You don't end up looking sculpted. You just end up looking like a smaller, softer version of your current self.
Which is why the biological cost of losing that clay through endless cardio is enormous. I mean, this explains why someone can lose 10 pounds strictly by running and severely cutting calories, look in the mirror, and feel completely frustrated.
Because they change their size, but they fail to change their shape.
Precisely. Reshaping the human body structurally requires resistance training to build and preserve that dense tissue.
So if building that biological clay is a non-negotiable requirement for a sculpted physique, we have a massive contradiction to solve here.
How so?
Well, if building muscle is required, how fast does it actually happen? Because the fear of waking up suddenly massive is incredibly real for the everyday listener.
Yeah, that fear is very common. But we can put hard numbers to it using that 2019 systematic review and meta-analysis on women's resistance training.
The data on this is wild.
It is. The researchers aggregated data on women engaged in consistent, structured resistance training. And the results are incredibly grounding after an average of 15 weeks of training.
Which is nearly 4 full months of hard work.
Right, almost 4 months. The average lean muscle mass gain was only about 1.45 kilograms.
Hold on, let's contextualize that for the listener. 1.45 kilograms is a little over 3 pounds. We are talking about 3 pounds of muscle spread out thinly across the entire human body over 4 months of sweating, straining, and lifting.
It's a very small amount.
That is the bag of apples I mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Building actual contractile tissue is one of the most painstakingly slow metabolic processes the human body undertakes. The body is naturally frugal with its energy.
So it doesn't want to build muscle?
Not really. Muscle is a highly expensive tissue to build and maintain, so the body resists adding it unless absolutely forced to by consistent stress and adequate calories.
But wait, in that same 15-week period from the study, the physical strength of the women improved massively, right? They were lifting significantly heavier loads.
They were.
Let me stop you there because this is where the listener's brain breaks. If the science proves that physical muscle growth is incredibly painfully slow, why do so many women feel so strong, so fast? Are they confusing a physical size increase with something else?
Yes, they are confusing muscular hypertrophy with a neuromuscular adaptation.
Neuromuscular adaptation.
Right. When you first step into the weight room and start a program, those rapid strength gains you experience in the first month have virtually nothing to do with your muscles getting bigger.
Wait, really? Nothing at all?
Practically nothing. It is entirely driven by your nervous system. Your brain is essentially learning how to communicate with your muscle fibers.
So it's like upgrading the software of a computer rather than, installing a bigger hard drive.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism. Your central nervous system learns how to recruit more motor units simultaneously. It coordinates your stabilizing muscles better.
It just fires the electrical signals more efficiently.
Exactly. And that sudden surge in strength makes people feel like their physical muscles must be growing rapidly to lift the heavier weight. In reality, your body is just removing its own neurological handbrakes.
Wow. Okay, understanding that actual tissue takes months to build makes perfect logical sense when we were sitting here talking about it. But logic usually flies out the window when you step onto the bathroom scale.
Oh, the shale is a whole different psychological battle.
It really is. Let's be real about the listener's daily experience. You start a new lifting program, you eat clean, you are sore, and 2 weeks later, you step on that little glass square and the number is up 3 pounds.
And panic sets in.
Total panic. My instinct is that I've just undone a month of dieting and I'm getting fat. Walk me through exactly how much water a muscle can physically hold because I'm skeptical.
Sure. To understand the scale jumping, we have to look at the body's immediate physiological stress response. When you lift weights, you are deliberately creating microscopic tears in your muscle fibers.
Right. That's what causes the soreness.
Yes. To repair those micro tears, your body initiates a localized inflammatory cascade. White blood cells and nutrients rush to the area, and that inflammation naturally brings a significant amount of fluid with it.
So you are literally swelling.
On a microscopic level, yes.
Just to heal the tissue.
Exactly. And that fluid has mass, which registers on the scale. But the bigger culprit is actually glycogen. Yeah. As you demand more intense work from your muscles, they adapt by storing more fuel locally. The primary fuel for explosive lifting is glycogen, which is derived from carbohydrates and stored directly inside the muscle cell.
Okay, so more fuel in the muscle.
Right. And the biological mechanism here is critical. For every single gram of glycogen your muscles store, they are required to store roughly 3 to 4 grams of water alongside it.
Oh, wow. Wait, 3 to 4 grams of water for every 1 gram of glycogen.
Yes.
So your muscles are essentially acting like fuel tanks, just soaking up water and carbohydrates just to prepare for the next workout you throw at them.
Precisely. When a muscle cell is fully stocked with glycogen and water, it feels firmer and fuller to the touch. This means the scale might completely stall, or it might artificially jump up a few pounds in those first few weeks.
But this is not adipose tissue. This is not fat gain.
No, not at all. It's fluid and fuel.
This is why Sofyan practically begs people to stop judging their progress solely by gravitational pull. You know, you have to track waist measurements, take progress pictures, and monitor how your clothes actually fit.
Because if you abandon the weight room in week 3, because the scale went up,
you are quitting right when the biological magic is starting to happen. You are swapping soft, passive tissue for highly functional, metabolically active tissue.
and we throw around the term metabolically active, but the mechanism is really fascinating. Muscle tissue is like a larger engine in a car.
Okay, I like car analogies.
Even when the car is just idling in the driveway or, when you're just sitting on the couch, that larger engine requires more fuel to sustain itself.
So it burns more calories doing nothing.
Exactly. Muscle requires continuous protein turnover and energy just to exist, whereas fat is simply passive storage. By building muscle, you are permanently increasing your resting metabolic rate.
That's incredible. But, even when we know the early scale jump is just water and glycogen, and we know the biology is slow, we still have to confront the extreme imagery people see on social media.
The influencer physiques?
Yeah. The fitness influencers or competitive bodybuilders who are massively muscular. Those images fuel the long-term fear for the everyday listener that they might accidentally cross the line and get too big. Let's break down the actual mechanism of extreme hypertrophy.
Well, to achieve that extreme level of muscularity requires a lifestyle so far removed from a normal human existence, it is practically a different species of effort.
It's a full-time job.
It really is. Hypertrophy, which is the actual cellular enlargement of the cross-sectional area of muscle fibers, requires specific triggers. To look like a bodybuilder, we are talking about years, often decades, of highly specific, high-volume progressive overload.
And it's not just the lifting. I mean, the body won't build that tissue out of thin air.
No. The nutrition demands are staggering. Because the body is frugal and doesn't want to carry excess muscle, you have to force it to grow by existing in a strict, sustained caloric surplus for years.
You literally have to intentionally overfeed the body constantly.
Yes, it requires heavily structured nutrition, immaculate recovery protocols, and frankly, in many extreme competitive bodybuilding environments, it heavily involves exogenous hormones and performance-enhancing drugs.
Right.
It is a calculated, extreme pursuit.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Worrying about accidentally looking like a professional bodybuilder just because you start doing some dumbbell rows is exactly like saying, I don't want to start jogging on the weekends because I don't want to accidentally become an Olympic marathon runner and run a sub-2-hour race.
That is spot on. The logic is identical. It completely trivializes the insane dedication, the elite genetics, and the extreme, often unhealthy lifestyle choices of those competitors.
It's an insult to their hard work, honestly.
It is. Yeah. You will never accidentally achieve a physique that requires an individual's entire waking life to be dedicated to maximum muscular growth. It simply does not happen by mistake.
Okay, so if we can entirely remove this fear of the accidental bodybuilder from our minds, we are left with a very compelling reality. Let's look beyond aesthetics entirely.
Let's see.
Let's look at what strength training does for a woman's body over her entire lifespan. Because the data from the Mayo Clinic paints a slightly different picture than just, looking good in a swimsuit.
The medical perspective completely reframes this conversation. As humans age, our bodies undergo a natural degenerative process called sarcopenia.
Sarcopenia.
Yes. This is the involuntary loss of skeletal muscle mass and strength. Alongside sarcopenia, women in particular face a severe drop in estrogen during menopause, which drastically accelerates the loss of bone mineral density.
So if we do absolutely nothing, our bodies naturally become weaker, our metabolism slows down because we lose that active engine, and our physical frames literally become more fragile.
They do. They become brittle.
Walk me through the mechanics of how lifting a heavy piece of iron actually makes a bone harder, because that sounds like magic.
It's not magic. It relies on a principle of mechanical stress. Think about how your skin reacts to friction. If you continuously rub your hands against a rough barbell, your body adapts by building a tough callus to protect the skin.
Right, you get calluses.
Bones react to stress in a very similar way. When you perform a heavy deadlift, your contracting muscles pull intensely against your tendons, and those tendons pull directly on your bones.
Wait, does the bone actually bend on a microscopic level?
It sustains microstress, yes. It bends slightly. And that mechanical tension signals specialized cells, called osteoblasts, to travel to that area and lay down new bone matrix.
Wow.
You are literally forcing the bone to absorb calcium and become denser to survive the tension. Strength training preserves the muscle that protects your joints, but it also fortifies the structural integrity of your skeleton.
Which drastically reduces the risk of fractures and falls later in life. And the American College of Sports Medicine position heavily emphasizes this. They state that moving from zero resistance training to just some resistance training is arguably the most meaningful intervention an adult can take for their long-term health.
But there's a psychological catch here.
What is it?
People are terrified of the word heavy.
Ah, yes. Heavy is a scary word.
But heavy is a completely relative concept. Your muscles do not have eyes. They cannot read the number stamped on the side of the kettlebell.
I love that concept. The bicep doesn't know if you're holding a 10-pound weight or a 50-pound weight.
The central nervous system only understands tension, mechanical failure, and effort. A weight that feels impossibly heavy for you today might serve as your lightweight warm-up in 6 months.
That's a great point.
Heavy just means an appropriate level of challenge that forces your biological systems to adapt. You must challenge the muscle safely, of course, with excellent technique.
Right. Poor technique and lifting just to stroke your ego are dangerous.
Very dangerous. But taking a muscle close to fatigue with good form, that is the exact mechanism that triggers growth, density, and health.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means we need to reframe how we view the weight room entirely. Strength training isn't a cosmetic chore. It is a biological 401k.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, but instead of compounding interest, you are compounding bone density and muscle fiber. You are investing physical tension right now to purchase physical independence, resilience, and power for your future self.
Because avoiding the weight room due to a misunderstood aesthetic myth is essentially choosing to bankrupt your long-term physical capability.
Which brings us to the actual application. We've talked about the science, the biology, and the psychology, but how does the listener actually apply this tomorrow when they walk into the gym?
The practical steps.
Right, because it is incredibly intimidating to walk past the safe, familiar row of elliptical machines and step into the free weight section without a plan. Let's lay out the practical blueprint from Sophie Ann's notes.
Well, the framework requires structure and discipline, not randomness. You want to aim for 2 to 4 dedicated strength sessions per week. And the absolute core of these sessions must be compound movements.
We were talking about squats, deadlifts, overhead presses, and rows, right?
Yes, those big lifts.
But why compound movements specifically? Why not just use the seated machines that isolate one muscle at a time?
Because compound movements force multiple joints and massive muscle groups to work together as a synchronized system.
Okay.
A squat isn't just a leg exercise, right? It requires your core to stabilize, your back to remain rigid, and your nervous system to balance the load.
Right. Everything works at once.
Exactly. This systemic stress provides the highest return on your time investment. It burns more energy and stimulates far more overall adaptation than, say, sitting on a machine extending your leg.
And to support that kind of intense output, what does the nutrition side look like?
Your nutrition must be explicitly tied to your primary goal. If your goal is fat loss to reveal that muscle tone we discussed earlier, you must sustain a slight caloric deficit while keeping your daily protein intake high.
Because protein is the building block required to repair those micro tears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And alongside the lifting and eating, you incorporate daily walking for basic cardiovascular health and prioritize your sleep, because the actual muscle growth only happens while you are resting.
But the entire blueprint falls apart without the master key, which is progressive overload.
Yes. Progressive overload is everything.
Let's focus on progressive overload, because this is where I see a major trap. Most women aren't lifting too much. They're lifting entirely too little for entirely too long.
Oh, absolutely.
They grab the exact same light pink dumbbells they've used since 2018. They constantly jump from one trendy, sweat-focused workout class to another, and their only metric for a good workout is how many calories their smartwatch claims they burned.
Using the smartwatch calorie burn as a metric for strength training is a massive error.
It really is.
Resistance training is about forcing a biological adaptation, not maximizing heart rate. The concept of muscle confusion, constantly changing your exercises to shock the body, is a myth that prevents actual progress.
So you shouldn't change workouts every week.
No, because progressive overload is a survival mechanism. If you lift the same weight for the same repetitions every week, your body says, I already possess the muscle required to survive this stress. There's zero reason to expend energy building more.
You have to force the body to adapt by asking it to do something it currently cannot do easily.
Precisely. Progressive overload means you are systematically demanding more over time. That might mean squeezing out one additional repetition.
Or just slowing down the movement to improve your control.
Yes, or slightly increasing your range of motion. And eventually it means increasing the physical weight. You aren't chasing a burning sensation in the muscle. You are meticulously chasing progression.
And the timeline for this, when does the listener actually get to see the physical reward for all this biological math?
For true, undeniable visual changes in your body composition, where clothes fit differently and the physical shape of your body alters, you have to commit to 8 to 12 weeks of focused, progressive work.
Wow, 8 to 12 weeks.
Yes, you cannot judge the program after 2 weeks when the scale jumps due to water retention.
8 to 12 weeks of relentless consistency. That means ignoring the scale noise in week 3, trusting the slow biological process, and keeping a physical logbook to ensure your strength is actually going up.
Ultimately, the most empowering takeaway from all these sources is that lifting weights gives you options.
Options are good.
They are. It gives you the option to actively sculpt and shape your physique rather than just starving it smaller. It gives you the option to fortify your skeletal health, to supercharge your metabolic rate, and to completely free yourself from relying solely on endless cardio sessions for weight management.
It is about building a body that actively works for you rather than constantly feeling like you are at war with your own biology.
Beautifully said.
Which leads me to this final provocative thought for you to take away today. What if you completely stopped measuring your fitness success by how much of yourself you can shrink, starve, or burn away, and started measuring it by how much physical capability, armor, and raw power you can add to your life? How would that mindset shift change your entire relationship with the gym tomorrow morning? Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and in the meantime, let's roar.